Welcome everyone to this presentation today with Victoria Wueschner on F.I.V.E MeO DMT. Really excited to be here today with you, and thanks for taking time out on a Sunday for the Australian people. My name is Dr. Lani Roy. I'm the founder and director of the Signs of Life Psychology, which is an organisation it's been around for about 12 years now, but it's grown as I've evolved, and really I'm at this phase of my journey where I'm using the Signs of Life platform to really support other organisations in the field of psychedelics and mental health, really growing an ecosystem that the medicines can be proud of, with a major focus of integrating the science and the sacred. So in our services, we provide clinical therapy. We do protocol development for trials, student placements, which support PRISM, which is Psychedelic Research in Science, the Australian Psychedelic Society, and Entheogenesis Australis, and also the Mental Health Foundation Australia. So I just wanted to acknowledge those people that are doing incredible work here in Australia, and connecting with other wonderful people around the globe, and that's why I've got Victoria here today. So we might just take a moment to just shake off the morning and drop into this space together, just acknowledging the traditional owners. If you feel like closing your eyes with me, please do so. Yeah, just acknowledging this incredible country, the lands in which we're from, and the traditional elders which hold these songlines. And just acknowledging their wisdom, their connection to country, and just this hope that we can live more deeply in symbiosis with nature as they do. Just feeling into the incredible altars around the world who work in sacred ceremony by the fire, in the jungle, in mountains, and how these medicines are making their way all the way around the world into labs, into clinics, to people's homes. If we can just really hold these medicines, we can bring them to the mainstream with respect and reverence, and cultivating a community that really looks after each other. Oh, beautiful. So Victoria, I'll leave it to you to introduce yourself and your wonderful background and all that you're doing, and your sides, and I'll just be here to support, and but I'll jump back in for the Q&A when you're ready.
That all sounds so great. Thank you so much for having me, and thank you all for taking the time out of your days to come and be here to learn about this beautiful medicine. And I'm really, really excited that it's all women here, to be honest. I love the feminine energy. I actually just got back from the moon dance, which is a traditional Mexican ceremony with over 700 women dancing. So I'm really in the feminine energy, and happy to see that that's the majority of what's showing up right now. So I can share a little bit about my background. So as you can see, I'm here in Mexico. I'm on site at retreats where I work as a retreat leader, focusing on the safe and effective use of F.I.V.E MeO DMT. I'm also a F.I.V.E MeO DMT integration specialist for Tandava. I'm the co-founder and president of F.I.V.E, and F.I.V.E stands for F.I.V.E MeO DMT Information and Vital Education. And this is a centralized resource hub on F.I.V.E MeO DMT for really anybody who's looking to learn more about this medicine, whether it's somebody who's never sat with it before, somebody who's sat many times and is really truly an avid psychonaut, or somebody looking to step into the role of facilitation, or even facilitators who are wanting to refine their skill sets. And so, yeah, we really brought together so many different beautiful voices. Actually, one of them is here on the call, Bianca. Hi, Bianca. We brought all these beautiful people who are experts in their fields to share their wisdom on this platform and part of our training as well, because we're going to be training facilitators through the F.I.V.E platform. And I'm also the director of education for psychedelic wellness company Cavalia Collective. And so I prepared some slides just to share about 5-MeO DMT, harm reduction and integration, some of my favorite things to talk about. And after the slides are complete, we're going to get into some Q&A. So if anyone has any questions while we're going through these slides, please just pop them in the chat for Alana and we'll make sure to get back to them. So I'm just going to share my screen. Here we go. Perfect. Can everybody see this okay? Awesome. All right. So before we dive into it, as I am speaking on the behalf of F.I.V.E, I do need to say this disclaimer. So F.I.V.E does not endorse or promote the use of 5-MeO DMT and does not encourage or condone any illegal activities. F.I.V.E aims to promote harm reduction via education, and you are solely responsible for understanding and complying with all the laws that you may be applicable to. So this is essentially saying if you choose to work with this medicine, you do so at your own risk. So just making sure to do your research. And after this presentation, if you are feeling called to learn even more, you can head to our website, which is 5-meo.education. And so, I'm pressing next, but it's not taking me to my next slide.
Maybe the bottom arrows.
There we go. All right. So I think the first main thing that we need to take into consideration when we're choosing to work with this medicine in harm reduction purposes is the difference between N and 5-MeO DMT. So often these two get lumped together because DMT is in both of these words, and it's actually very dangerous if we do so. So first, to understand that if we are having an experience, we are still an individual self. I am still Victoria going on a journey, and it is a very visionary experience. We've all heard of people experiencing, you know, the machine elves, the gestures, Aztec pyramids. It's very, very visionary. There's a beginning and there's an end. And, you know, while we always, of course, do recommend if you're going to sit with any medicine to sit with a sitter, it is generally safe for self-exploration. And 5-MeO DMT is not like that whatsoever. In the peak experience of 5-MeO DMT, if we go all the way, there is this distance of the ego. We temporarily get to become that drop rejoining the ocean. We get to become infinite totality. And in that space, we are no longer a self. We are no longer an ego. I am no longer Victoria. I am everything and I am nothing. And in that space, because it is so beyond the confines of the mind, it's so beyond, you know, time, it's limitless. It can be really, because in that space, we can lose all control over our bodies. We can become very dynamic. And there are so many different types of sitters with this medicine. You know, some people might just lay there, what we call the Buddha, where they're just laying there peacefully with a few little smiles, a few little nods. There can be toning, there can be screaming, there can be thrashing, fighting, kicking, anything, you name it. And you know, this is beautiful. It's catharsis. And I know we're going to talk about that a little bit more into this presentation, but we do not have somebody who is a trained facilitator there. We can physically harm ourselves, and we can also asphyxiate as well. There's many kind of things we need to be mindful in this experience, and it really is a non-negotiable to have a trained facilitator when we're working with 5-MeO DMT. So I feel that's kind of the main first component of harm reduction. Let's go to our next slide. I'm going to just press it and wait because I think my internet's a little slow. Come on. Okay, let me press that thing. There we go. All right, so in terms of harm reduction, when we're journeying to work with 5-MeO DMT, there's a few different ways we can work with it. And this is a really hot topic and question in the 5-MeO space. Do I work with the BUFO toad secretion, or do I work with the pure molecule? And, this is of course a personal choice, but it's important to know all of the information around it first. So first, when we're talking about the pure molecule, there's a few different names for this: pure molecule, jaguar, F.I.V.E, synthetic, and then the glucose secretion. So the pure molecule is made inside of the laboratory. It's pure 5-MeO DMT, and the glucose secretion is made within the parotidal glands of the toad. And from a harm reduction side, there's kind of two harm reduction things with the toad and with humans. So first is the conservation piece. We as human beings are flocking to this medicine as we see such benefit with it. Unfortunately, the toads are being put in a lot of risk and harm, and people are going in there, they're over milking. When we over milk the toads, we're leaving the toads defenseless, as that's their defense system. The toads are being taken out of their homes and put into captivity. That's bad. Sometimes they're being taken out of, they're milked, maybe just like 100 feet away or something like that. And they're being milked there and actually left there. And even if they're being milked ethically, leaving them in that space is not ethical, because these toads only leave a 50-meter radius from their homes in their entire lives. So they'll spend their whole lives trying to get back to their homes. And unfortunately, sometimes this means that they've crossed roads and they'll get ran over cars. Sometimes there's fences in the way and they'll constantly be running into the fence headfirst till they die. And even chytrid fungus. So as human beings going into their habitats and milking without gloves, we've introduced this fungus that's really been a pest to them as well. So taking the conservation into account. Dosage specificity is something that we need to think about as well. So in the BUFO toad secretion, there's anywhere from 10 to 30% 5-MeO DMT. And that's a huge margin of error. So even if we have the most accurate scale possible, we never actually know how much we're giving someone when we're working with the BUFO toad. And we really want to know this. Sometimes if we give someone way too much, this can put them into a whiteout, and sometimes they can even get really extreme reactivations lasting for weeks and even months, and it can be really, really damaging to people. And then there's the cardiotoxic element as well. So some of those additional tryptamines and alkaloids are cardiotoxic. We specifically work with the pure molecule as our main demographic are people, between 50 and 70. And if someone has an underlying heart condition, this can be really dangerous as it can push them into cardiac arrest. And so when we're stepping into this, we really just want to feel into, what are we feeling called towards? What is the more ethical decision? And, this is really a personal decision for us. All right, next slide. Who? Okay, so next it's really tuning into the who, what, where, when, and why when we're stepping into this medicine. Who is a really important aspect. We want to do our research. Anybody who's in the 5-MeO space that knows that there's been a lot of wild, crazy, cowboyish stories out there of things happening. And, if we do our research, we can really avoid this. And that's really why F.I.V.E came out to the forefront is, even if there are practitioners out there, it's impossible to change all of these practitioners. But what we can do is we can educate the public of what to look for, of what is a safe facilitator, what is a safe center, what are some kind of red flags to look at when I'm going to sit with somebody. A first one to kind of look for is malpractice allegations. So if anybody is familiar, there is a letter of malpractice that's out there on the internet. A few facilitators who, pouring water down people's mouths after serving them rapé. The rapé and the water kind of mixes together and people asphyxiate on it. There's been sexual allegations where people have been under medicine and had facilitators on top of them or taking their clothes off. Really a lot of horrific things. So we really just want to be mindful to check into those things first. You should be able to find it on the internet, as well as if you're doing reaching into the community and getting some references. If you can tune into your community and ask for different people who have sat with that facilitator, or even if people in your community can connect you to people that have sat with them and really ask them what their experience was like. We also want to make sure that people were trained. Unfortunately, I can speak from my own experience. I had to train 3 different people before I felt confident enough to hold a pipe in an integrity, because these trainings a lot of them are like 2 days, 2 days, 3 days, 2 weeks, 3 weeks. I haven't really seen anything more than 3 weeks. I've heard of a few like a couple month apprenticeships, but you know, had I had went out and served this medicine after my first 2 trainings, I definitely would have harmed someone, could have killed someone, I'm not sure. So really just tuning in and asking the facilitator, what kind of experience do you have? How much have you worked with this medicine? Who have you trained with? And have you done your own personal work? I think this is a really important thing, because this medicine is such a easy medicine to get your hands on. And you know, it's really easy to go buy a feather and call ourselves a shaman and never have actually worked with these medicines. This is kind of an unfortunate thing. So just really tuning in and seeing, like, has my facilitator done their own work? Have they worked with this medicine? Do they have community and mentors? I think this is probably one of my favorite topics to speak on when it comes to who you're sitting with. And, you know, this medicine is such a new medicine on the scene. We don't have an ancient wisdom tradition, a lineage of elders teaching us how to hold this medicine, teaching us when, you know, maybe we've fallen into an ego trap and our heads are right up our arses, and really keeping us accountable. So if we don't have anyone keeping us accountable, you know, we can really find ourselves into dangerous situations, and that's also dangerous for participants as well. And of course, find someone who's participant driven. So somebody who is making the experience all about you. It's not about the facilitator. The facilitator is there to keep you safe, to allow you to get the most out of the experience, and really be there for you in any way you need as you're unfolding in the biggest experience any human being can go through. Some aspects that we should be looking for when we're tuning into who we're going to be sitting with: is there a discovery call aspect? Is this facilitator curious to know about me? Do they want to know where I'm coming from, why I'm coming to sit with this medicine? Is this the right time for me to work with this medicine? And, you know, really, of course, getting those first kind of moments of, is the participant who's coming to work with this medicine in a sound space psychologically? Are they physically well? And are they in a stable environment to come and do this work? I think that's a really important aspect to touch on. They should have a screening intake process. So it should be more than a couple of questions. I have seen some screening intake questionnaires that are like 5 questions. The more thorough, the better. We're not just getting a read on, you know, if this person is psychologically and physically safe. We're also getting a read on why exactly they're coming to do this work, what kind of trauma they're showing up with, what kind of special needs this person might need to be met with. And of course, preparation and integration should always be included, as preparation truly is that piece that allows the participant to feel as safe as possible in their experience, to go as deep as possible. And the integration is what allows us to have truly lasting change and transformation within our lives. I'm going to take a drink of water. And so when we're speaking about the what, I think this is such an important aspect to cover, because a lot of participants that are coming to work with this medicine, if they don't know what this experience is, it can destabilize them, it can cause PTSD, and it can actually re-traumatize them. And what I mean by this is, if someone is in the peak experience with this medicine and they have no idea that their mind can go offline within it, that the ego can dissolve away into oblivion, what the ego says to the person who is dissolving away is that it is dying. The person will truly believe in that moment that they are dying, and what they need to do is to fight with everything they have to stay alive in that moment. And it can be extremely traumatizing. In that moment, if they think they're dying, they're trying to pull themselves out of the experience. And oftentimes, if people are trying to pull themselves out, we also see really intense reactivations, because that energy didn't have the opportunity to arc as well. And that really does bring us into, you know, the bliss and the challenge. When we're talking about this, we hear so often the blissful experience. It's the Godgasm, that we get to experience ourselves as God. It's infinite, it's unconditional love. And yes, it is all those things, but it is also challenging as well. The challenging experience does talk about, because if we don't know, it can become challenging. Again, the same thing. We can start to panic in that experience and not really soften into it and go as deep as possible. And catharsis considers. So, you know, knowing what can happen both in the experience and on the outside of the experience is so important in allowing ourselves to soften and surrender to the experience. Really letting people that their bodies can express and why it expresses that way. You know, some people might see somebody through it looks like a demonic exorcism and think, oh my God, this is so bad. But, you know, the truth is our body stores things deep, deep, deep somatically. And we all have kind of different away messages that our bodies release in. For some of us, that's going to be screaming, for some to be crying, some of us it's going to be kicking, some of us it'll be dancing. And you know, it's really just what our body needs in our own unique process to let it out. But if we, for example, are one of those people that go into what looks like a demonic exorcism and we don't know that can happen, and the people in the room don't know that can happen, and they're looking horrified, this deep sense of guilt and shame can kind of wash over, and that can actually bring trauma to the experience. So letting people know, you know, this can happen, letting people know things can get sensual and sexual, clothes might come off, we might have orgasms, everything is welcome, everything is safe. And in that way, people can freely express themselves in whatever way spirit wants to express through them. And so we must know what this exists.
I might get you to turn your video off, hun. Just it's a little bit shaky.
Yeah. Okay. Can you still see my slides?
Yeah, perfect.
Okay, great. So we want to also consider where we're going to be doing this work. You know, there's something to be said about stepping out of our everyday ordinary lives into the non-ordinary. You know, science is showing us that when we do things like traveling, our brains are in a state of plasticity. They're open for change and for transformation. It's the same with this. You know, if we're stepping into a completely new world, a new realm, we're open for transformation within our lives, for that change. And so there's different ways to experience this medicine, and there's no way that's wrong in terms of ceremony, and there's no way that's right. Of course, there's unsafe ways and unethical ways, but there's different ways. And so, you know, some of them are what are known as one-off ceremonies. This is when you just go for the day and then come back to your everyday regular life. One-off group ceremonies, same thing, but with groups. There are private ceremonies. They can be done, you know, in multi-day containers, and group ceremonies that can be done in multi-day containers. And, you know, I've seen them both done beautifully. Personally, I like to work in the multi-day retreat setting. Why? So when people are stepping out of their ordinary everyday lives and they enter into a space that is very grounding, and they have somewhere to really truly allow their bodies, their souls, and their minds to land, they allow themselves to start getting comfy and cozy and safe in their environment. Then they start to also get familiar and safe with their facilitators. And it really just kind of starts to create this container of safety where they feel like they're able to let go into that experience. So that, as well as in between the sessions, really allowing themselves to unfold deeper and deeper into the experience. It can be really jarring if we have this profound, we'll call it the godgasm. We have this profound godgasm in, say, New York City, and you know, we have to go back home that night and go straight back to the office the next day. It's almost like there's this little seed inside of us that's just sprouted and is starting to grow and bringing us all of these insights and wisdoms of how our path meant to unfold, and places that we have work to do in our lives. But because we're not allowing ourselves that time and that space, it's almost like we hit a wall and that flower is not allowed to come grow. We're not allowed to see those things. And we're gonna talk about this more in the integration section. But yeah, it's really important for us to take time and space out. So really just choosing if we want a quick touch in or if we want a planned container. And I will just say here, what we put into this experience is really what we're gonna get out of this experience. Some questions to consider. when we are choosing where. Is this a contained setting that I'm stepping into? Is this a safe setting that I'm stepping into? Is there an emergency plan here put in place? And is this a participant forward space as well? And, you know, I'll talk about the participant forward a little bit and a few other aspects. You know, really, this is about allowing someone's experience to be their own experience. And, you know, I think this is such an important thing. People are stepping so far out of their comfort zone to do this work. We as facilitators need to continuously be stepping into our own work as well to meet people where they are coming. And so that means, you know, if someone's in their experience, and I'm a story, I had a sister and she had never sat with this medicine before. She was very excited and she finished her journey and she said, you know, the facilitator, when I got there, his rule was that I had to be gazing in his eyes the whole time if I wanted to do the medicine. And it just broke my heart because this is supposed to be this woman's experience. And suddenly this facilitator is making it about themselves. You know, we see this with body language as well. Sometimes you may have seen on social media or something, if someone is in their full experience and there's a facilitator standing over top of them with their hands over top of them, like they're the one healing them, you know. And the truth is the people who are stepping in to do this work, the participants, we are the healers. And it's not the people that are holding the pipes. We are simply here to keep this person safe and really support them through their experience. So really kind of looking out for those signs, the signs that if the facilitator is there for the person and their experience, or if they're there because, you know, they want to be the guru or whatever. We want to look at safety aspects as well. So like we were talking about earlier, the body can become very dynamic in this experience. There's a procedure that's called penning. So instead of doing things like restraining somebody, we want to keep their body soft and centered on the lily pad or the launch pad, allowing their body to express anything they need to. But, you know, we're keeping them safe. We don't need to restrain them. We don't need to hold them down. We don't need to get in their experience and interfere. Seeing if there's purge buckets, making sure that this center or this ceremony is softening anything that's hard, making sure that there's no height or any water. You know, people have jumped off cliffs during the medicine, people have asphyxiated on water, people have hit their head on rocks. So is this a safe space for my body to completely let go in whatever expression that might be? And choosing a contained setting. You know, I think it's so important when we're stepping into this work to really allow ourselves to feel safe and know that there's nothing that's going to be kind of coming into our awareness or field that's unwanted. You know, this one gentleman that I spoke to, they had a ceremony in New York City in a park. I couldn't believe it. And these group of nuns walked by and thought that these people were doing drugs and that there was some demon possessed people. So they called the police, and this gentleman came out of his journey being arrested and to the police station. And so we don't, yeah, it's pretty crazy. We really want to be mindful. Am I going to be allowed to have my experience without seeing any other outside energies that I don't already know about? What's the noise situation going to be like? Is it going to be quiet? Is there grounding spaces? Sometimes it takes a while for us to come back from these experiences. And, you know, it's really nice to have a quiet space in nature where we can allow that flower to continue to bud within us. And then, of course, we want to have that post experience. You know, after the one-off ceremonies, one of the things that I struggle with a little, oftentimes, you know, if there's many people to get through serving in that one day and it's an only one-day experience, a lot of the time people need support after the experience, and it's not there. So just making sure that you're going to have support if you need it. A little drink of water. And then the when. So I believe that this medicine is a birthright of everyone to experience. If it's something that you want to do, I say go for it. But of course, there are moments when it is a good time and moments when it might not be such a good time. Of course, we want to be in a sound psychological state on no contraindicating medications. We do want to have a committed mindset here, because we might think because this experience is only 15 to 45 minutes with X factors on both sides, that this isn't a big experience. There's not a lot of time that gets committed to this, but that's not actually the case. There's a lot of energy that should go into preparation and into integration if we really want this to be lasting within us. If we don't choose to step into preparation or integration, what can happen is this can become a peak experience that really just fades away like a dream. And the idea is to really get something out of this. We want to make sure that we're going to have time for preparation. We're going to want to make sure we have time for integration and a stable environment. So when we land back home into our environments, what is it like? Are we entering into an environment where maybe it's a toxic relationship? I'm going through a divorce. I've, lost my job, all these kinds of things. It can already be kind of a destabilizing experience to have, especially when all of our meaning systems shift and we come back home. We really want to have a space that we can ground in. And if it's already kind of ungrounded when we leave, it can be potentially dangerous for our integration process. The how. So we've kind of spoken about this preparation. So, everybody different preparation calls depending on what facilitator or center you're working with. But there should be at least a few calls beforehand so that both parties can really tune into what that intention is and start to mold the container, really deciding how we're going to be going in with this person, what kind of dosage protocols. For example, we had a woman who was grieving the loss of her grandmother, and we went in very specific. We went in with low to medium doses while she worked with the picture of her grandmother and went in and grieved her grandmother. And so, every person is going to have kind of a different pathway for their experience. And the only way to really get to figure out what that's going to be is getting into this preparation process, really seeing where this person wants to go, what they want to get out of this experience. If they got everything they possibly could out of this experience, what would that look like in their lives? And of course, this is paired with personal preparation work as well. And again, this looks different for everyone. For some people, it might be sitting in meditation and really tuning into that intention. Personal prep work is really important. Set and setting, this is the navigation. Again, taking time and space out of your life, that on-site support, integrative practices, and then integration as well. So, integration for us, I can speak, we include 4 integration calls post the experience. So a month of integration is included. And, I really love this. It's funny, and we're going to talk about this in a minute, but it's so easy to brush over the integration process with this medicine. And when it's something that's like included or almost forced into the experience, I've seen a lot more transformation in people's experiences when they actually get that integrated into their container for them. And the why is super important. We really want to know why we're doing this medicine. Is it for spiritual exploration? Is it for personal healing? Are we peak chasing? Are we looking for a magic pill? And, I always like to talk about peak chasing here because this is something that we do see just in medicines in general, I think. We definitely do see it in F.I.V.E. and MeO. And, this is where we can feel like when we're in these states that we are somehow healed, we are somehow enlightened, we are somehow better as human beings, and the ego can attach around that and make a story. And so suddenly when we get back into our everyday regular lives and we slip into a pattern of maybe, someone cuts us off in traffic, we swear at them and we think, I'm enlightened, I've ruined everything, I need to go do 5 MeO DMT again. And it's this constant revolving of peak chasing, and we're really not getting anywhere because we're not integrating the experience. And actually, what's really interesting with peak chasing and F.I.V.E. and MeO, it's not only that we're not getting anywhere because we're not integrating, we can actually be going backwards. So as we are working with the medicine of the ego, and it can dissolve it, if we're integrating that experience, we can start to find ourselves on a path where we're living deeper in oneness with all being and creation. But we can also pivot to the other side of things. If we're constantly doing this medicine over and over and over, saying, give me more, give me more, give me more, and not integrating it, we can actually inflate our ego and step into ego superiority. And so we really want to be mindful of that. And then the magic pill as well. So, with any medicine, there's no such thing as a magic pill. We have to do the work. It is going to be a tool for us to have a heightened awareness around the different patterning that we carry within ourselves, so that we're able to better access the work and step into it, but it's not going to do it for us. So it's really important that we know that coming into the journey, that, all right, I'm actually going to have to put work into this. Integration. So integration really is that master key. It really is what allows this experience to stick with us. And, the integration period can last anywhere from days to years, just for one single experience. What we put in, again, is what we get out. How we engage with our integration process is really, what is going to fruit for us in it. And, something I want to speak to of why this can be such a difficult experience to integrate is there is that visionary versus non-visionary component. So like we were just talking about at the very beginning of this presentation, if we, for example, are going on a multi-hour visionary experience, say with ayahuasca, and, we were visited by our ancestors, and, we went to our past lives, and we had all sorts of symbolism revealing things to us, then we have multi-hours of content to dissect. And because it was such a profound experience, our awareness over the next days to months and even years are consistently reliving that content and asking questions around it and more deeply integrating it. With 5-MeO DMT, because it's not a visionary substance, it's a feeling-based remembrance. So our mind is not consistently going back to it. And even though it does try to go back to it, it's really just grasping for content. The mind cannot and will not ever understand this experience because it is beyond the mind. So we're really tuning solely into that feeling-based, what is known as gnosis, knowledge through experience. And so it can be so easy when we come out of the experience to say, wow, I feel so great. I don't need to integrate any of that. But if we are not integrating it, that feeling seems to almost, dissipate and fade away. And then when we fall back into those patterns, we think, oh my gosh, I wish I would have integrated that. It feels like it was all for naught. And so we really do need to integrate, really engage with the integration process. I'm going to talk about a few challenges that come with integrating medicine. I think, integration is so unique to each medicine, and they all have their own processes. One that I have seen, especially if we're not taking that time and space, is what I call the washover. And the washover is when it seems like the entire experience just gets washed over because we're not taking the time and space after the experience to really be with it, to really honor it, to really feel what's coming up in ourselves, because we are in a state of neuroplasticity after this experience. We are in a state of heightened awareness to see the content that's coming up in a different way. Normally our brains are monkey minds and there's so much happening all at once. It's really difficult for us to apprehend what's going on in our human psyche. But after this experience, when we've really tuned in and had that remembrance, it's so much easier for us to see what's coming up and to work with it and to choose, hey, this is a pattern I see. I don't actually want to keep this, and I'd like to replace it with something that does serve me, or seeing the patterns that we do like and keeping the ones that we do like. But if we don't make that time and space to be with it, it just gets washed over. Another big challenge that can come up for people when they have this experience, this is the biggest human experience somebody can have. And, if people in your community, say your friends, your family, your coworkers, have not had this experience and you come back, it can almost feel like you don't belong or you don't fit in. And, what's been kind of unfortunate to see is it's really interesting. Sometimes our healing process can be confrontational to other people. So say, we've seen this a lot, where somebody comes to do the work and maybe their partner is not super supportive of it, but they're like, do your thing, do you. And the person comes and has this profound awakening, and they feel a huge amount of transformation unfolding for them, but then they step back into their home space and their partner's super unsupportive and doesn't want to hear about the experience, and it can really make somebody feel lonely and make them feel secluded. So it's really important to have community around you who are familiar with the psychedelic space, and that can be online integration circles, in-person integration circles. There's tons of meetups. Of course, support from your integration specialist, just having some kind of lifeline to somebody who has either been through this experience or familiar with the psychedelic space. And just a few more, I'm going to just really briefly touch on the falling away. This is a huge one that's completely ripped me inside out. My first experience with this medicine. This is, I'm going to just call it the God frequency. And even though we get off the mat and we're complete with the experience, that frequency is still vibrating from within our cores, and we carry it with us. It is shifting us and changing us in ways that we can't even imagine. And when we step back into our everyday lives, everything might not fit anymore. It might be really minor. It might be really major. For me, it was super major. I went home, did not like my clothes. I did not like my car. I did not like my friends. I didn't like my music. I didn't like my partner. I didn't like anything. And so I completely shifted and changed. But, while it was extremely liberating, I also felt very alone, that nobody understood what I was going through. So it's important to know that this phase can happen. And I kind of like to see it as a divine reorganization. If these things are falling away, they're not serving us, and it's for the better. But again, having that lifeline to community is huge. Meaningless detachment. In the experience, we truly experience what it means to be without self. And sometimes we can come back into the body and disassociate from self, really not associating with the human suit that we're in. And that can leave people in a really ungrounded, kind of confusing situation as they navigate the human experience. So again, community lifeline. The dark night of the soul. So this is an interesting one. This also happened to me a couple of years ago. So I can just kind of speak from my own personal experience. When I was in my teenage years, I dealt with extreme depression, suicidal ideation, and I suppressed it for a very long time, just keeping it deep within. I went into a really powerful ceremony, and after that ceremony, everything from those moments that I had been suppressing for all of those years came up, and I went into a very deep depression. I even had thoughts of suicidal ideation, and I was still so confused because I loved my life. I had nothing to complain about. Everything was amazing. And then it dawned on me, okay, all of the stuff that I had to work on is now coming up to be worked on, and I have the tools to work on it. So I'm going to start engaging with this. And I started to work on it, and it passed. But if we don't know that it can come up, we might think that this medicine broke us. And of course, uncovering unknown layers. So we might go into this medicine work and have an intention for something that we want to heal. And we might feel like we've broken through it, we've healed it, we've transformed from it, and suddenly a new layer pops up underneath, like this never-ending rabbit hole of healing to do. And for those of you in the psychedelic space, that whenever we heal something seems to come up. But this can be kind of jarring for people who think they maybe only have one thing to work on, and then something new comes up. So, I really feel that with this medicine, there are so many different phases of integration, and I think there will continue to be more and more that pop up. But I think these are some of the main ones to look for. And when we're planning for integration, we want to nest for ourselves. So part of our preparation before we even sit with this medicine is thinking about, what is my landing like when I get back home? I like to try to recommend, if people can, to take 3 to 7 days off before getting back to work, to their everyday kind of lives that maybe call them to have all these long lists of to-do, dealing with our bosses, dealing with, maybe relatives that push our buttons, learning to create boundaries for ourselves with those around us who like I said, maybe push our buttons. Social situations too, you know, social situations after this medicine can be a lot. Just really giving ourselves that space to not feel like we need to commit to things. Taking a diet, so not just like our food, but like, you know, I'm going to watch, what kind of books am I going to watch? What kind of people am I going to be speaking to? What kind of food am I going to be eating? Kind of music, like there's so many things. Everything we're taking in that moment, because we're in neuroplasticity, we are a sponge. So we are literally in each moment choosing how we want to recreate ourselves. And so just being really mindful of that. And then enlisting the support of an integration specialist or a therapist. This can be really supportive. I do always like to recommend that if you are going to enlist the support of someone, that they are familiar with this. I think that's important for any medicine, but particularly with this medicine, as it is so big and so beyond the mind. Having somebody in your corner who really understands the experience can be really supportive when we're going through a challenge experience. Okay, we're at the end.